I got the chance to ask DICE the tough questions about Battlefield 2042. Here's how that Q&A discussion went. Hey lads, thanks for clicking onto a new video. Before we dive into this, tickle that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way to the end. I'd also like to give a shout out to the viewers that left the most outrageously generous comments on my Season 2 gameplay video. I really appreciate the kind words very much. I'll do my best to make every video as good as that one from now on. As part of the EA Creator Network, I was lucky enough to be invited to a behind closed doors capture event for the new Season 2 content. This included a first look at the stranded map, Crawford, and the new guns and vehicles too. Once I and a couple of other creators finished recording, we got the chance to submit questions to DICE. Now these questions were curated before reaching the actual developers, so not everything we asked made it through. It's one massive downside of these remote events. DICE can pick and choose the questions to answer, whereas at in-person events, they more or less have to always answer the question. The first question answered was, what are your thoughts on Season 1 and will it affect gameplay choices and content going forward? To which DICE replied with yes. They stated that players really liked Exposure and the other Season 1 content. Apparently this sentiment was reflected in the in-game data internally at DICE, like the player numbers. They also stated that the developers working on the game learned a lot from Season 1 and that those learnings have been applied to Season 2 and will be applied to future content as well. The next question was about the assignments. DICE explained that the assignments are a means of unlocking Season 1 content players might have missed, not to mention the new Portal Vault weapons like the M16A3 and the M60E4 LMG. A big focus with designing the assignments was to make them accessible to more people. DICE explained that many players complained about the weekly missions because they're unable to complete all of them in time, and that goes for the Battle Pass as well, though I think this mainly refers to the bonus missions. Assignments are tailored to new players as well that are only hopping into 2042 with Season 2. Question 3 was about Crawford. DICE plans to monitor the internal data to see how Crawford performs alongside the other specialists. According to them, while Liz was very popular at the beginning of Season 1, she is now one of the more balanced specialists in the game. They expect the same trend for Crawford. They have also designed him to work best alongside Irish with his deployable cover. Now DICE emphasized that balance tweaks will come if necessary. Either he's too weak or too powerful. Next up, we raised our concerns over Crawford's minigun specifically. DICE then explained how it's been balanced. It's stationary, which leaves you very exposed. It can only be placed on very flat surfaces, which you lads will probably notice in-game. There were some hills I couldn't deploy it on because the ground was way too uneven. It doesn't overheat very fast and is quite tanky as described by Florian, the lead game designer, but the damage output isn't very high. Again, I found myself getting more assists than kills with this thing. DICE doesn't seem worried, but will monitor things just to make sure. Question 5 was all about balance changes and the Season 2 updates. Now, I was told at the time the version of the game I played and recorded is what is live now as the season has gone live. Like with Crawford, DICE plans to keep an eye on the new weapons and vehicles to make sure nothing is being abused. They told me that changes will be made based on community feedback, same as Season 1. Question 6 is all about the return of the all chat functionality on PC. It's something that PC players have begged for since launch, and I got a pretty definitive answer on this. One developer stated that they've had a lot of discussions about all chat internally and that they really do hear the feedback. Then they gave the classic "we can't commit to anything right now" response, but one of the community managers, Tom Stratman, chimed in by saying for now, no changes. I took this as no, there won't be all chat for Battlefield 2042, mainly based on how DICE reacted to the question. It's hard to convey in this video, but you could tell from how they replied that it's probably never going to happen. A similar answer was given for question 7, which asked if Commander mode would be added to 2042. We got the same no comment right now answer, but they certainly implied that it wouldn't be happening, again with how they answered. Question 8 was a really good one, and I got a pretty strong answer to it from Florian, the lead game designer. It was to do with the performance and asset struggles presented in 2042 and how Season 2 fares in comparison to the launch game and Season 1. Florian replied by stating that things are better in Season 2 because Stranded is smaller than the base game maps. This means assets in-game can be used more efficiently. There's the same number of assets like buildings, foliage, cover, players and vehicles, but it feels and looks better because the map itself is so much smaller. From day one, DICE knew Stranded was going to be a smaller map, so they were able to make it run a lot better. DICE also confirmed that future maps will be much smaller too. So thankfully, I can't see us getting any more open, flat maps like Hourglass or Discarded. They'll probably be around the same size as Exposure or Stranded. Now, I won't lie, at this point in the Q&A, I was honestly getting a little frustrated. I really appreciated the invite to the event. Please don't get me wrong. I know plenty of much bigger YouTube channels weren't invited, so I really don't take this sort of thing for granted. But like I said, at this point, I was getting a little tired of the very rehearsed, basic level questions about the content. I really wanted to know the big answers, so I eased into it with question 9. How long will season 2 last? I knew this was an easy question, and more or less hoped they'd just answer my 2 follow-up questions because of it. They told me that their plan is to run season 2 for 12 weeks just like season 1. Then I shot them 2 big ones. Will Ripple Effect and DICE add more game modes to Portal? Maybe Chain Link? And will Battlefield 2042 be supported longer than the 4 advertised seasons? My Chain Link question was a little cheeky because at the time I'd seen data miner Temporeal tweet about it that day. And of course, the support question was on everybody's mind. I was just the one to ask it. Funnily enough, Chainlink has gone live in Portal, so I'm not sure why they didn't answer that one, but the support question was a gamble and unfortunately it didn't pay off. DICE immediately stopped accepting any more questions. They made their closing remarks and just ended the Q&A discussion. I didn't take this personally as I really assumed that question would be avoided, but I owe it to you lads to at least ask them, even if it does get me in the bad books. So regrettably, the Q&A was a really nice thing to include for creators, and again, I do appreciate the invite, but significant information was left out despite me asking the questions we really want to know. I don't blame DICE for this either. It's probably under some legal agreement they have with EA and shares and stockholders and all that legal stuff. And with so many management changes happening around the franchise, I wouldn't be surprised if EA and DICE themselves just don't quite know the full plan yet. But look, I'm glad I asked, and I hope you lads got something from the other questions at least. DICE then held another presentation very similar to this for the public after season 2 launched, but didn't accept questions from players. Unfortunately, it did bring some bad news. While DICE will be improving the matchmaking capabilities in Battlefield 2042, they currently have no plans to add a server browser to All Out Warfare. This is especially unfair for players in underpopulated regions. I've seen a huge outcry from creators and players in regions like Australia, for example, who have pleaded with DICE to revert this decision. Here in Ireland, I'll be fine. It's an inconvenience, but I know I'll find a match within just a couple of seconds. For those other countries though, things are way more complicated. Persistent server capabilities may come to Portal though, which is good news. But anyway, that about wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching right to the end, you absolute legend. Subscribe for more Battlefield 2042, and I'll see you lads later.